name is Chris Evan, and I'm the CEO of Survival Dispatch. I was a member of our national powerlifting team for many years and won many state, national, and world championships. Even though I'm in great shape for being 55 years old, I am not immune to father time. Most of us feel weaker and make more trips to the bathroom as we get older. U.S. Army research has led to a breakthrough for the #1 water for older Americans. It's not a special sports drink, but a mix with essential nutrients most hydration drinks lack. Keyword, hydration. These nutrients are proven to enhance muscle strength, reduce soreness, and improve bladder health. A Texas doctor leveraged this research and formulated a drink mix to help you stay strong. Click the link below for up to 44% off at nativehydrate.com/dispatch, plus free shipping and a free gift. This is one of the best deals I've seen for high-quality BCAA drink mixes. And we're back. And man, we've got a really interesting discussion teed up for tonight. We've got S2 in the green room right now and Michael Letts. And I'm going to let Michael introduce himself when I pull him in, but they're doing some phenomenal things across the country with law enforcement and for law enforcement. So tonight's video is brought to you by Native Path. The BCAA drinks that you saw in the intro video here, not only do they taste great, they'll raise your energy level, help you recover faster. I can tell you I've pigged out on BCAAs throughout my entire career, and these are the best ones I've ever had. CCW Safe, the premier self-defense coverage people out there. We've got one of the founders coming on here shortly. You'll hear more about them soon. And Sawyer water filters. You all know how I feel about water filters, and the Sawyers are top of the line. So quick mention, I brought it up last night, and I'm going to pull it up right now. If you click the first link in the video description below and you go to this webinar and you sign up, you don't have to attend it, but if you sign up, Survival Dispatch gets a small stipend from them. But I'm going to be covering some preps, your top 5 preps that everybody needs to have done before January the 20th, because we're probably going to have a bumpy ride between now and then. But here's something else. If you have a good circle of friends, a decent circle of friends and families, and you email support@survivaldispatch.com, we will give you an affiliate link for this webinar. And every person in your circle who signs up with that link will pay you $20 for it. So good opportunity to make some easy money on the side. And other than that, make sure you check out patreon.com/survivaldispatch. The brief for every video, including this one, is up there. It's got all the links, all the stuff that we put together on the back end. So if you want to go do some additional research on your own, you can go ahead and do that. All right, so let me bring everybody in here. All right, as I mentioned, we've got S2 with us tonight. I love to get off my lawn, by the way. We just had a conversation on that while you were away, S2. And our friend, Michael Letts. Michael, good to see you.
Always a privilege, Chris. Thank you for what you do for this country. If we didn't have you, we'd be in deep trouble.
Well, I don't know about that, but I got a big mouth. So
every patriot does. That's the great thing about it. You know, we're in this together.
Yeah, we absolutely are. And I really appreciate our mutual friend Kyle Reyes introducing us. He's got a bigger mouth than I do. So I look up to him. He's a youngster compared to you and me, but I still look up to him. He's a great
I say he's a wayward child to him sometimes. He's my wayward son, but you know, I mean, he's doing a great job.
Oh boy, is he ever. So before we dive into tonight's topic, Michael, tell us about Invest. I'm going to pull up your website here, but I want to hear about all the cool, great stuff you're doing for law enforcement.
Well, we started this in 1993. That's almost 31 years ago. Wow. I've been providing officers with vests because when we started, 52% of cops across the country had no protection at all. We got that down to 19% because at the time, Chris, the only thing available was a Kevlar vest, or what we call a concealable vest, which you wear underneath the uniform. You know, that's great stopping a pistol, but it won't stop anything else. And with this open border situation that this country has had to endure in the last 4 years with a flood of cartels, terrorists, criminal elements, human sex traffickers, you name it. You know, it used to be in the old days, people didn't want you to know you were going to commit a crime. That's why they carried a pistol and hid it in their back pocket. Now they go into places with AK-47s and long-range rifles, which will cut right through a concealable vest. So we had to stop Chris, and create new technology about 10 years ago. It's called an active shooter vest. It has titanium plates in it. Will literally stop anything on the market. It'll stop a 50 cal. Now, you'll be dead from the blunt trauma, but you'll look good in the casket. But it will stop anything. But unfortunately, here's the problem, Chris, is that 90% of officers across the country do not have this technology. Only 10% do. We're fixing to go into a situation with this election having gone the way it did, which is in the best interest of America. But now it's time to put words to action. And that means, starting to round up all these illegal immigrants, all these drug dealers, these terrorists, et cetera. And they're not going to be very happy about leaving. So we're going to be putting all of our guys and gals in harm's way. It's a shame to do that if they don't even have the necessary equipment to come home safely to their families. They've got families too, Chris. They'd like to come home and see their kids at night.
Yeah, absolutely. These numbers, by the way, are staggering, Michael. 13,520 vests donated, 2.8 million donations. I mean, speak a little bit with regards to the vest donation program.
Well, what we do is, of course, we had to change our policy. Unfortunately, just in the last few months, I made the change. It used to be it was on a first come, first serve basis. Of course, we always got more inquiries and requests for help than we could meet. But, Chris, we're getting officers shot and killed in the line of duty almost daily. And so what we have done is I've changed the policy to say if your agency loses an officer in the line of duty, you go to the top of the list. And here's why. We want to come to your area immediately, donate some of these active shooter vests in honor of that officer and his family. It wasn't just the officer that was lost. It dramatically affects the family. It dramatically affects the whole community. We want them to know this, not just as the community support the officer and his sacrifice, but the entire nation does. That's why you see so many people that are involved in our donations across the country. And that's why it's so important that we show them how much we value and appreciate them. Because, Chris, over the last 4 years, they've gotten a really bad rap. The mainstream media has pretty much done its duty to destroy law enforcement in that thin blue line. And what is interesting that has happened, that was a kind of an unintended consequence, or maybe it was. You can argue that point. But is now you don't have any young people that want to come up through the ranks and put on the badge. So not only did you lose hundreds of thousands of officers over the last 4 years, when we started 4 years ago, we had 1.2 to 1.3 million. We're under 700,000 now and dropping continuously on a daily basis. And who's going to step up and fill the void? Well, no young person wants to do that based on what they're seeing. So we're having to put together programs now to try to help turn that negative image around and inspire young people to once again step up and be involved in community service. Protecting those who protect us is our motto.
We had our good friend Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers and Major Mike Hall on last week, and they both said that it's probably those of us with some gray in our beard that are going to have to assist on some level just because of this shortage, right?
No question. Well, we all took an oath, Chris. The oath had no expiration date. Some of us are going to have to do one more tour of duty, I believe, to be able to get this country back to where it needs to be.
Yeah, I don't disagree. The amount of work ahead of us is pretty significant, but if nothing else, I agree with you. We've got that rebel nature in our DNA and in our blood. It's just a quick aside. I'm not sure why it tweaked me, but when I was consulting after I left Sun and Oracle, I did some work for Mercedes out in North Carolina. And these two guys called me up that were from Germany, and they said, "Hey, we're driving down to the Keys. Would you like to have lunch together tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So when they got here, they said, "Boy, we never expected America to be X, Y, and Z." And I said, "Well, it's not." And they said, "Yes, it is. We've been here for 6 months." I said, "You've been in Raleigh, Durham for 6 months." I said, "We are the United States of America. We have 50 autonomous states. And in many states, county to county, there's a big variance, right?" And they said to me, "Well, there's got to be something that's common across the entire country." I said, "Yeah, absolutely. Leadership." And they took offense to it. They were like, "Well, we have great leaders." And I said, "I'm not saying that y'all don't have great leaders. But what I'm saying is that if you ask," and this is 20 years ago, I said, "if you ask some World War II vets on the German side what they hated the most as far as fighting the Americans was concerned, is that normally, and as you know, Michael, if you take the leader out, it could be a squad or any level above that, usually that's it, right? And they give up." I said, they will tell you that it didn't matter who they ended up killing, what leader they ended up killing. Another American stepped up to the plate, assumed the leadership position on the battlefield, and kept on going. And I said, look, like when I said, you seen little kids playing American football? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, when you see a player from one team extend their hand to a player from the other team, he may not have the captain's jersey on, but in that moment in time, he is displaying leadership. And I don't believe that anybody's culture around the world pounds it into citizens like we do. So
I think you're right on.
You know who the Germans really hated in World War II? Teufelhunden.
That was pretty good.
Sorry, Michael. What were you fixing to say there, Michael?
No, I was just reinforcing your position. You know, you've been involved in those situations, combat situations, many times, and I will tell you, the least person you expect to show the greatest amount of courage and leadership usually is the one that does. You know, I mean, it's not necessarily, and your sergeants are great, your lieutenants are kind of a little weak sometimes, but, you know, it's the privates and the corporals that realize I'm here to protect my brother, and I will do whatever is necessary, pick up the mantle, and move forward. And it's just constantly amazing to see the spirit of America all across this country.
I couldn't agree more. So you wrote an article recently on Kyle's site, Law Enforcement Today.
Yes, Chris, sir. Do I need to remind you, is your left eye working tonight?
Oh, okay. So Michael, thanks, Esther. So there's this company out there. They make these card games called Conflicted the Game, conflictedthegame.com. And originally they developed this game so that people would apply some thought towards post-apocalyptic situations, right?
Right.
And it's kind of turned into a test of morality as well. So we always ask a conflicted question at the beginning of the episode, then the panel answers it at the end, and we ask for our audience to answer it in the comment section. Mike Sterling normally handles this department, not me. So when Mike can't be on with us, at least 50% of the time I completely forget to mention it. So I'll do that, and then we'll dive into
you can delegate that. You can delegate that to me if Mike is not on. How's that?
Deal. Do you want to roll with it then? You've got the brief.
I sure will.
All
and
right,
people, I'm going to channel Mike here for a second. We want to see your answers down in the chat. And if you don't mind, please hit that thumbs up. Okay, here we go. It was time Gordon sat his wife down and told her about the realities of a world post-collapse. Things would be much different now. She would have to adopt a new way of looking at the world. If you had to prepare a loved one mentally and emotionally to live in a world after the collapse of modern society, what would you tell them?
Good question for tonight. So we'll circle back at the end of this episode. We'll give you a chance to answer as well, Michael. And like I said, we encourage our audience to leave their response down below. So you wrote an article recently for Law Enforcement Today that really struck a chord with me. And I mean, it paints a somber picture of President Trump's security, or potentially, security risks. And we've spoke at length with regards to this on Survival Dispatch News. So we've got some, documents that we'll pull up in a little bit, but I'd like you to speak to the heart of this article to our audience, so they hear it from a professional like you and not just a loudmouth like me, just how serious this is.
Well, you're an expert, I would consider as well, Chris, but I will tell you this. After 30 some odd years in intelligence, law enforcement, service, country to our country and others, I also have a degree in counseling. And one thing you and I were talking about initially, Chris, when the hatred is so deep, and the hatred has been so deep in this campaign, I mean, we're everything from garbage to Nazis to fascists. You can't turn that off in 60 seconds or in 24 hours. That hatred is still there. And so they are not in any way trying to determine, let's all unite and have a kumbaya and figure out how we make this nation move forward. They're determined, how do we make sure we call it a ruse, and how do we figure out how to continue our agenda and our objectives. And what has been their agenda and objective? Well, they've been very clear about it. They said the President Trump cannot set foot ever again in the White House. That's their ultimate objective. And they'll do whatever is necessary to get to that point. They've made 2 assassination attempts so far, among other things that they have done in security that hasn't become public nationally and available. So they're not going to quit now. They're smart enough, though, Chris, to say we don't want to get too much criticism. So let's start this off by saying we're all going to have a great big love fest here, and they will move forward. At the same time, while they're speaking that, they're preparing their forces, their people, their activists to begin to do rioting in the street. You saw that, first of all, on the West Coast in Seattle and Portland. Now it's tapered down a little bit, picked up in New York City. But this is just a dry run. It's kind of like what you saw, we're going to test the waters a little bit. This is just a little tip of the iceberg where this is headed. And, of course, their main objective is to make sure that they can create enough of a inner conflict in America that they can declare martial law and try to go ahead and suspend the election, maintain power for as long as they need to try to do so. We're not going to let them do that. We know what their objective is. We know how to combat it. And the way we're going to do that is not just with law enforcement or military force, but it's we as a people have to stand united, which is what I loved about something we talked about before. I think we came on the show, Chris. It's time that we make the American public aware. Look, every agency, police agency, sheriff's department, have what we call posses, which are when you volunteer to become credentialed and certified and learn how to be of assistance to your law enforcement agencies. Every state has a militia. And quite frankly, folks, look here. Here's the problem we've done in the past. We decided that we just want to sit down, let somebody else run the country. We're just going to kind of take it easy and enjoy making money and enjoy some R&R. Well, those days are over. If we don't all pitch in and save this country, we will all lose this country, and we'll never get another chance to have one like we have now.
Yeah, very well said. S2, did you have a chance to read Michael's article by chance? I think you're on mute. S2.
Yeah, sorry. No, I did not. I've been out of town all weekend and on personal business. It kind of took precedent over everything, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So I spoke to Kyle. He said the traffic to law enforcement today with this article has been pretty significant. That's fantastic because I don't know that people are fully aware of just how extensive the risk is to Donald Trump because all they do is watch mainstream media, and the mainstream media just fills them full of propaganda, right?
Well, it does.
A lot of people don't know this, but Trump, they've tried to assassinate. This is including the last 2 times. They've tried to assassinate him 11 times since 2016.
Correct. That's what I was alluding to, but I didn't go ahead and put it out there like you did, S2. Thank you for giving the actual numbers on that. But, quite frankly, what people need to understand is this is a truly pinnacle of a fight between good and evil. Evil just doesn't go down without a fight, and they're going to go down and fight. They have nothing left. This is Custer's last stand. They realize that, and they're going to play every trick in the book that they can do, including, quite frankly, and we're seeing this in Arizona and other places. I can't turn the election on the presidential level. Let me see what I can do on congressional seats. Let me see what I can do to mess up anything down the power. We've already had governors come out, Democratic governors. We're going to oppose anything you do. If you say it's raining today, we're going to tell you it's sunny. Anything that we can do to cause this administration to fail, we're determined to do. And with that mindset, you have to understand when you have that kind of level of anger and hatred, it doesn't go away. And so what they want you to do is they want you to go to sleep, basically, and say, okay, we've done our job. Everything's great. It's on autopilot. The country's going to survive on its own. No, it won't. These are the most tenuous times or the days ahead, not just what we went through, but the days ahead when they will do everything they can to destroy the transfer of power and to destroy our country from within.
I agree. And while you were mentioning that, I found this meme that pretty much sums up what we're seeing on the other side. Please, bro, I know we cheated and even tried to assassinate your candidate, but bro, please, now's the time for unity. Like, please, bro, don't prosecute us for committing crimes and trying to steal the election. We got to heal this country, bro. Please, I'm begging you.
The sad part about that, Chris, is that resonated more in 2016 than it does even now. One of the things I love about President Trump, he's got a great heart. He really has a compassionate heart. But I think he understands that the kind of element of people we're dealing with are not compassionate people. These are not good people. These are not, people that you could work with and negotiate with. They have one agenda in mind. They've sold themselves for that agenda, and they're going to die for that agenda if they have to, and that's what they're willing to do. And, quite frankly, if we don't have the same passion about our freedom and we're not willing to die for it as well, then, we probably deserve what we get. But I believe that the majority of American people are not going to forsake the memory of our forefathers. Everybody's got a veteran or a family member that has served, I'm sure, at some point in time. Let's honor their service and make sure we restore America to its basic principles of freedom once again. We won't get a second chance, folks.
So somebody years ago said to me, and I didn't agree with it initially, but when I slept on it, I did agree with it. They said, your greatest strength is usually your greatest weakness. And I think a good example of that is people like you, S2, myself. I would hazard to guess 99% of our audience have had this philosophy as a libertarian for years. Look, do whatever you want to do as long as you don't hurt nobody else. You're not breaking the law. That's okay. Just do your thing. And that strategy has become a tremendous weakness, in my opinion, because we basically told them, go do whatever you want. And if it doesn't hurt us, we're not going to put up a fuss. And then even when it does hurt us, we don't put up a fuss. So I want to move to the threat from Iran and whether it's realistic or not. So let me give you like a quick synopsis of how we got information on this. So I had an unplanned call with Doc Pete Chambers. This is going back maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago. And somebody sent him a bunch of intel showing 9 man pads, Hezbollah and Sinaloa cartel together with CBP officers at the board. Not all the pictures were released for a multitude of reasons. And he said half hour after he got the intel, Basel Boz, who's a CIA guy, and I'm not saying anything that hasn't been put out there, by the way, he called Doc and he said, hey, Doc, do you know anything about these man pads coming across the border? And Doc said, yeah, I'm looking at a bunch of evidence right now. They compared notes. They were contacted by 2 totally different people. And then Doc Pete, of course, immediately shared that information with the Trump team. I can give you some breaking news here for Survival Dispatch. I thrive on, when we get the scoop on things. I mentioned to you, Michael, that Bobby Kennedy reached out to Doc Pete Chambers a few years ago,
right,
with regards to the injections, and Doc ended his 39-year career because he wasn't willing to do that. And Bobby Kennedy, wanted to work with Doc, and Doc said, well, yeah, I'm open to doing that, especially on things that we agree on, but I'm not voting for you and I'm not endorsing you because you're a Democrat. And that, God bless Doc Pete. He's such a straight shooter and a great guy. So fast forward to this past Friday, and here's the scoop for all y'all out there. Bobby Kennedy and one of the members from Trump's transition team reached out to Doc Pete and asked him to be part of the Trump intel group. They want him to come back to D.C. Doc says he ain't going back to D.C. So there's probably some stuff with horse trading will have to be done over the next week or so. But the cream always rises to the top, and Doc Pete if we had more Doc Petes, the world would be a better place. So with all that said, I asked Doc when he was telling me this, and this was before it had gone public. I said, so what's your opinion here? Is it the cartels want to take Trump out because they're worried that he's going to, mess the border up on them? Obviously, Hezbollah would love to take him out because of the Soleimani, kill a few years back. And Doc said to me, he said, well, I can't confirm this 100%. He said, but he said, what I think this is the bad guys, meaning domestic bad guys, meaning Team Obama, are looking for a way to take Trump out and blame it on the Iranians, Hezbollah, and the Sinaloa cartel, and saying, oh my God, can you imagine this, horrible travesty that's happened, right? And then, of course, it's back in the news cycle. I'll pull up a couple quick ones here. So this is an article on Daily Mail that Mike Sterling brought to my attention. And I spoke to Doc Pete maybe an hour and a half ago, and I said to him, I said, how much of this article in the Daily Mail, is good versus conjecture, hyperbole, whatever the case may be? And he said to me, 75% of this article he could vouch for. He said 25% of it he could not vouch for. So that doesn't necessarily mean it's not true, but that's what he could vouch for. So this link is in the brief for this evening, and would encourage y'all to read it and see what's said, because based on Doc Pete's analysis, about 3/4 of it is legit. Michael, I don't know if you had a chance to read this article or not, but even if you didn't, I would love to hear your thoughts on the whole thing, like as far as Iran.
I have read the article. I will tell you this. Doc is right. My intelligence sources tell me the same thing. Here's basically from a layman's standpoint for all your listeners that you can kind of look at it this way. The leadership, the brains, the operation are internal, not external. They're internal. There are people that have been involved in our government for years who have fallen to greed and to lust and to power, hungry, have been put in compromised positions, have used their positions to gain influence, to be paid for it, et cetera, et cetera. All that's going to be coming out. Trust me, you're going to be shocked at the corruption that you see in this government. But what they're attempting to do is they don't want you as the American people to think it was your government doing that. They were trying to look for what we call patsies. And so there are plenty of patsies out there. Iran doesn't mind being a patsy because they have great hatred for Trump. As you said, Hezbollah, Hamas, the cartels, there are plenty of people. None of them would be willing to do all this without the oversight, direction, and supervision of inside our government. Just like we have talked about, and I know this is controversial, Chris, but it needs to be said. We take a look at some of the assassination attempts on President Trump. I've assessed those. Chris, there's no way that could have occurred under natural circumstance. You had to have inside help to be able to get to that point. I mean, it's just, there's no way around the evidence that shows that. And so this is what you're beginning to see, what the American people are beginning to understand, is unfortunately we've allowed our government to turn against us. Many people within that government have been used to turn against us, and a reckoning is coming. I tell people this all across the country. Trump's not interested in vengeance or retribution, but what he is interested in is accountability. If you have abused your position, misused your position of trust, you violated the law, violated the Constitution, you need to be held accountable. I don't care what your name is. I don't care what your party affiliation is or what your wealth is to do so. This is one nation that has a equal justice for all, is the way it's supposed to be written in the Constitution. We have allowed a two-tier justice system to occur, and it's time we put an end to that. And the first way you put an end to it is you expose the evil that we're talking about and make sure the American people see the players and what they've done. And that's coming.
Very, very well said. S2, I'd like to hear your thoughts on, I know you've been knee deep in this Iran stuff yourself, and just like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So basically our State Department has been playing this game for a very long time. And we don't have to look any further than our State Department that is putting all of this together. They get a trifecta out of it. Okay. If they succeed, they get to kill Trump. Secondly, if they succeed, they get to further the war or start a war between Israel and Iran. They're basically playing games. And the other portion of the trifecta is they also get a continuation of the Ukraine-Russian war because Trump is not there to stop it. So they have a mission to keep those things going because that is the money that fills their coffers and fills the politicians' pockets. They have no interest in stopping it. They know that Trump, his first day in office, he will stop both of those conflicts. He will sit there, he will call up the Ayatollah over there in Iran, and he will say, look up in the sky. Do you see the drone? It sees you. It knows where you are. And by the way, here's a picture of your house.
Yeah.
Correct. Love,
and the same thing. Go ahead. Sorry.
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, what I love about what you said is we need to make sure understand that money operates, gets an awful lot of things done. And, you know, when you take a look at all the aid, all the financial money we have given to Ukraine, I'm just using Ukraine, but this is typical in all our foreign aid. And you go to the front lines, where you say, where are you enjoying all the aid and all the equipment that you're getting? You find out only 10% has gotten to the front lines. What happened to the other 90%? Well, it all gets funneled back. It's a great way of money laundering, and it's a great way that those in power make sure they get their share. And that just goes, and I'm willing to say this, Chris, it's not just Democrats. We got some rhino Republicans that are participating too. It's time that we get back to statesmanship in our U.S. Capitol. In fact, I think you should serve without pay, to be honest with you. I think, it's time that you should go and serve and not want to stay there a day longer than you have to. Get the job done, get out of there, live under the laws that you pass, and let somebody else do it for the next time around.
Yeah, well said on both of your parts there. So the next video in the brief, I think it's 10 minutes. I'm not going to play the whole 10 minutes, but I'll play part of the beginning of it simply because according to this poster, I have no way to confirm the veracity of this, but sorry, this one, yeah, he's compiled 10. It's another one where there's some claims made that I just don't want to swear to, but let's listen to the first of that crap.
It shows you what's out there, though, Chris.
Yeah, and if people go and download the brief, it doesn't cost anything. It's free. Free and paying members both get it. I watched that.
Sad part. You know what the sad part of all of that is that most of the people that are saying those things have no idea why they hate Trump. They have no idea.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree with you more as to you asked the question. Give me one thing. They can't. The media has told him he is a threat to democracy and he is a Nazi. He's a fascist. And that's all I need to hear. And that's their position. They can't document or back any of it. But isn't it a shame that we've allowed America to become so brainwashed? Nobody thinks on their own anymore.
Yeah, 100%. So actually, on topic with that, the next post that I have pulled up here, the FBI needs reform. There have been thousands of death threats towards Donald Trump in the last 72 hours, all of which are public, and the FBI is focused on tackling satire text messages. So this is very similar to the stuff that's been going on in Great Britain with regards to, misgendering somebody or saying something that might have hurt somebody's feelings, whatever the case may be. Michael, I actually, from a law enforcement perspective, I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to comment on this, but the British have been letting hardened criminals out of jail to make room for people who've posted something on social media that either hurt somebody's feelings or basically said, holy crap, like we got to stop these invaders. They're raping our women and children. I mean, give me your thoughts on all of that. It's very Orwellian. I'm pretty sure that if Gavin Newsom could bring it here, he would.
Oh, there's no question about it, Chris. We look at that, we kind of stand back and say, wow, they've really gone off the deep end. No, not they. They've gone off the deep end, but it's not just them anymore. It has already infected our country. We see it with these rogue prosecutors. Thank God some of them got removed from office on Tuesday. But we see a whole movement that is funded by George Soros and many like him to try to put a mindset that, it's the criminals that are being mistreated. It's not the victims. And we need to do everything we can to accommodate them, make sure that they're comfortable, make sure that they're well taken care of. If you're a victim, you probably ended up deserving it yourself. So, it's your problem. And that is where, Britain has gotten. And we're fastly headed down that track. But now we've got the opportunity to change that. And I can promise you that we're going to do everything we can to make sure that gets changed, because that is not what is anywhere in our Constitution. And what is anywhere in our history, to be honest with you. And we're going to stop it before it gets to the point. I was on BBC in England, and one of the hosts, you could just see it. He said, I sure hope y'all prevail on Tuesday, because maybe if you do, maybe you'll find it within you to come back over across the seas and help us gain our freedom once again. They realize what they've lost. We don't, but let's make sure we don't get to that point.
My personal belief is, Michael, that if the election had gone the other way, that they would have teamed up with the UK police. The Met, the guy who's in charge of the Met UK police, said he was going to start coming after Americans. Right. And I believe that a Harris administration would have honored, extradition orders over people's social media stuff just to scare the crap out of people, so they're afraid to even share any information. I mean, it's mind-boggling.
I always wanted a free trip to England.
Well, S2, I mean, this is your world, right? You live in the online world, doing research. I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you think that any governor will have the balls to do what they're doing in the UK?
I think what would end up happening is you would get a lot of pushback from the residents of those states, and that would expose them in a very large way. And I think just like a lot of the things that we've seen in the last 4 years, when the I'm going to use the analogy of Bug's Life, when the ants get up in the grasshopper's face, the grasshoppers start to understand that a million of those ants will destroy that grasshopper, and they will back down real quick, and they do.
Yeah, that's a good visual. Um, the next one is just one of many examples, so I didn't want to flood the podcast tonight with them. But you mentioned, Michael, something along the lines of these, mentally unbalanced people. I mean, this guy, here's a guy who thinks he's a woman. It looks like he might be like a drug addict as well. I'm not saying that in a joking manner.
That's a meth head right there.
Method, okay.
I have to agree with this too. That all my years of experience, yeah, that's definitely a druggie.
So, can either one of you throw a ballpark number out there as to how many people like this, and not just like this, but in general, how many people are making death threats against Donald Trump, say on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, something like that? Just want to get a handle on the enormity of it.
My gut tells me, and we'll see whether S2 agrees or disagrees, is I think we're looking at 30% of the population that feels that way.
That was the exact number I was going to throw out there.
Wow. That's
astonishing. And it's shocking, because we have some people that do shows like yours, Chris, is all, it's just a small minority, 3, 4, 5%. Maybe that was 20 years ago, but it's not now. We're at 30% or better.
Yeah, that's I didn't expect that number to be that big. That's absolutely mind-boggling. So, Billy's one of my guys from back home in Texas. Trump needs to disappear and stay and work out of a deep bunker, blah, blah, blah. That's really good timing, by the way, Billy, because that is the next topic that we've got on the agenda to bring up. So a while ago, shortly after the second attempt on Trump, Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers, General Paul Valley, and myself had an exchange, and it went on for several days. S2 had a chance to participate, Mike Sterling, some of our other guys, and we put together a document on some of the measures that we felt Donald Trump should, adopt. And this is before the election, but we, said the same thing as you. It should carry on after the election. And so I'm going to bring that document up, and we won't cover every single thing that's in it, but we'll cover some of this stuff, especially with your expertise on the panel tonight, Michael. So what we did this on 9/29 and 9/30 is when this went back and forth. And we were talking, air defense measures. So equipping Trump Force One with advanced countermeasures. Do either of you know? I'm assuming the answer is yes. But does Air Force One have countermeasures?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good to know.
Extensive counter.
So does Marine One.
That's correct. Unfortunately, Trump One, of course, he's not using that anymore. Trump One does not.
Interesting.
We've heard the contrary to that.
That would have been originally added in because they didn't have it a while back.
Yeah, this was a recent event.
All right. Well, this document's a few pages long. I want to make sure we can get through it, and then we'll move on to some more stuff. But Michael, like your thoughts on ground and sea defense at Mar-a-Lago. Concern being is if you've been to Mar-a-Lago, there's sections of the buildings that are very, very close to the road, and it wouldn't take much for somebody to do a Timothy McVeigh and cause havoc. And of course, the drone threat, we started talking drone threats over 2 years ago, and people in our community said we were cuckoo for doing that. And it's not cuckoo, and it would be easy to attack anything, including Mar-a-Lago, with a handful of drones controlled by one operator to do extensive damage to it. And I've been told that there's 2 panic rooms in Mar-a-Lago, but it's not like the drones come in and you say, whoa, time out, let me get to my panic room. I mean, sort of thing. S2 had you can see some of the comments there were prefaced by the person's initials: deploy counter sniper teams at all times, highest ground possible, best line of sight for overwatch. MH is Michael Hall, Major Michael Hall. He's one of Doc Pete's guys. He's worried about the 2 islands, and that are, again, would be great for staging, as well as the fact that if you look at the waterfront on the intracoastal, there is not significant barriers to even slow people down if they came from the water.
Right.
Michael Hall also made the suggestion he likes Zodiacs patrolling them, and Mike Sterling had a counter to that. I don't recall what it was. Maybe S2 does. Oh, yeah, Mike Sterling right below him, Boston Whalers. So let's just talk ground and seed defense. I'll go to you first, Michael, for your thoughts on Donald Trump's security, at least when he's at home.
Well, and I will tell you this, that not even just being at home, but being up wherever he's going, where there is a big contention, shall we say, is quite frankly, I don't think the Secret Service under its current leadership is capable of providing the necessary protective details. Yes, they can be a part, but instead of being primary or having full responsibility, I think what we have to go to now is special forces. And I think, they're best prepared. They know how to do this. This is what we're trained to do. And quite frankly, we know how to put every measure in place that needs to be done to avoid a situation. Secret Service is not willing to do that and doesn't have the mindset of doing that. Here's what they need to understand. The times have changed. In the Reagan era, you worried about some Heatley or somebody coming up, pulling out a pistol and taking off a couple shots. That's fine. They can provide for that. Now we're in a warfare situation. Total elements have changed. And quite frankly, you need to have the best experienced people that have dealt with guerrilla warfare, covert operations, and that know how to handle it. And quite frankly, that's why I think there needs to be an element of special forces that have been assigned to this. And I think that's where we need to head.
That's interesting because, we've got all kinds of spec ops guys on our team and that we have regular subject matter experts. I don't recall anybody specifically saying that before. So kudos to you. S2, has anybody else said that? Have you said that by chance and I'm just forgetting?
Yeah, mine and Mike Sterling's suggestion was not so much special forces, but rather private security, namely Eric Prince.
Okay, right, yeah. But I think the concept of spec ops on your part as well as Michael's that's got merit. It's got, here's the thing. I question for both of you. I'll go to Michael first. Why do all the Secret Service agents have sidearms on them instead of, say, an SBR or something like that? Is it just for optics? What's the deal?
I think it's still part of this mindset that they can't seem to get out of. They haven't understood the transition, that we're in a new set of circumstances, that we're in a new operating mode, that we don't operate the way we did 20 years ago. We are at a warfare situation. And when you look at it as a combat or warfare situation, you view things entirely differently. And part of that, I'm not trying to put total blame on Secret Service. Part of that is just a political standpoint. We don't want to give that image and that outlook to the American people, that's where we're at. But I think you're doing the American people a disservice when you try to hide things and make it look like everything's great at grandma's house when it's not.
Quick question, S2, before you go. Quick question for Michael. And you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, if it's top secret or something like that. But do the service secret agents have your vest by chance?
Most of them do not know.
Okay. Seems to me that might be a pretty good move.
Well, here's the interesting part. We'll take a little quick side note here, Chris.
Sure.
Is, even from a military standpoint, they use the old ceramic plates, okay?
Yeah.
The problem with the ceramic plate is if you've ever thrown an ammo can on it, you crack it, and it's no good. And so the military recognizes now that these titanium plates are probably what is best for our military operations as well. But understand there's almost only so much titanium available at the moment. And so there's a lot more demand than there is the ability to fill it. And so you're kind of in a situation where who gets what first. And that's where kind of we're at across the country.
All right. So
Thanks,
just out of curiosity, then I'm coming to you, S2. What would a standard size 10 by 12 plate weigh titanium?
They roughly weigh about 7 pounds. They're not that heavy.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a few more pounds heavier. Put it this way: if you're wearing a concealable vest, you're looking at about 8-9 pounds. You're wearing a active shooter vest, you're working at 12, 13 pounds. I realize every ounce makes a difference over a 12-ounce age. But here's what I want to put a point in, Chris. The technology we now use for the carriers, the shoulder straps and all, make it so comfortable that you really can't tell the difference. The only difference that you can tell is if you jump in the car too fast. Kevlar bends, titanium don't. So watch your chin.
That's fascinating. I can tell you that Survival Dispatch, we had a long list of body armor companies who used to send us a lot of stuff, and we destroyed a whole bunch of 3A stuff with Pilgrim ammunition. So they're 9mm ammunitions, 50 grain projectile traveling over 2,000 feet per second out of a pistol, 2,500 feet per second out of a PCC, and they stopped sending us vests. So I always say to James from Pilgrim Ammo that he destroyed our relationship with a bunch of body armor guys. But okay, sorry S2 for getting off on a tangent there, but we'll come back to you now.
What was the question?
You're asking the wrong guy. I got some timers, man.
Move on.
Talking about the whole issue, of vests, military, special ops, and just kind of, where you saw why the Secret Service didn't have the most newest technology and the whole mindset about should we be in a warfare situation or are we still operating under the old firms protective detail?
Thank you.
Well, it's like everything else. I mean, we look at all of the members of Biden's cabinet. You can go out on IMDb and look up their names. They're all actors. Okay. It's all about the theatrics and the image that they're trying to portray to the American people versus actually doing their real job. They were covering up the fact that they had HSI people in there.
S2, I think we lost you there. Paging S2. Hey, we lost you for a second there, S2. I can hear you now. S2, can you hear us? All right, we'll move on for a second while we're waiting for S2's connection to get restored. So, Michael, these pictures here, so where my cursor is right there, that's Major Mike Hall there. And these are, obviously he's on Zodiac, so that's why you recommend them and stuff. But we put some stuff in this. By the way, I don't have any, credibility with the, Trump campaign or security or anything, but Doc Pete sure does. And so does General Valley. And when this was all done, they both sent it to Trump's team, and some of their ideas showed up about a week later. And both of them told me that it was not because I have any role. All I did was gather the information. Right. But it's interesting how some of that stuff actually made it into the protocol. But stealth and disguise protocols, Michael. So body doubles, disguises, no golf, the international travel, no international travel. I wonder how that would go over from a statesman type perspective of being the leader of the free world. Communications and leaks. We'll come to that one afterwards. Let's talk stealth and disguise protocols.
Well, here's the interesting part that you have with this is Trump has the personality, and I understand it. In fact, I'll probably share it, that, nobody's going to intimidate me or make me fearful into not doing what I think is best. And if I think it's best to go fly and see you, Chris, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. You just figure out how to make sure I'm safe. And quite frankly, that does pose a challenge. But here's what we have to get back on the mindset. You see, what S2 was saying before we lost the signal was here was the mindset that you had with the Secret Service. They were going to use, and we're not going to, they were using employees from Homeland Security who weren't trained at all in this to provide security and protective detail for Trump. I mean, which shows you their mindset. They don't take this as serious as they should. When we're talking about taking it from a normal perspective to a combat situation, to a military operation. And I think that's the mindset we're talking about here. Would be better for security for him not to travel on. I don't see him doing that because of the fact he doesn't want to send a message that he's intimidated by somebody's other threats. So we just have to make sure we step up and do a better job of providing the necessary protection so that he can operate the way he wants to and be the free world leader that he is so aptly portrayed. I mean, he is being viewed as fearless in one sense. I mean, you shoot him in the ear And instead of, crawling off the stage, he gets up and raises his fist 3 times. You want to fight? Come on, I'll give it to you. And that's the kind of image he has, and we're going to probably protect that image and make sure that happens.
No question in my mind, all that was divine intervention.
No question. I agree.
Yeah, no question. All S2, sorry we lost you there for a minute. We're discussing stealth and disguise protocols, body doubles, disguises, no golf, no international travel. But I agree with Michael. I agree with your point on international travel. You're right. In order to be the statesman, you have to actually do the job, right? So
Correct.
Go ahead and weigh in on those 2 points, S2. S2, can you hear us? Nope, he's gone again. He must be having some connection problems. All right, we'll move on to the next section. So communications and leaks prevention. And I think you alluded to the first point here, no trust, zero trust in government agencies. Obviously now he can't cut ties with the agencies that we had mentioned prior to the election. I would really like to hear your thoughts on Eric Prince and Blackwater. I'm going to stop right there and give you a chance to talk to that. My understanding is that not one asset under Blackwater's protection has ever been, killed or injured. And just that in itself is pretty confidence inspiring to a layman like me, but I'd like to hear your opinion as an expert.
Well, let me break it into 2 different areas. I agree with their ability because they're all former special forces and well-trained and adequate.
Right.
I do not know that I agree with where their loyalty lies, and I'll be very blunt, and I know they don't want to hear that, but, I am concerned that somehow, sometimes, it goes to the highest bidder, and there's a lot of people with plenty of deep pockets that would love to take a particular person out and disrupt this, create chaos and bring our government down. So I'd be careful as to who you put your trust in.
That's a phenomenal answer, Michael. And I just had another question pop up. I've heard different opinions on this, but what are your thoughts on supplementing the Secret Service with, say, additional private security? I know he has a small detail, but I'm talking in a grander scheme, playing a bigger role. I had some people say to me that the Secret Service would refuse to do that because it would be like a shared liability or something to that effect. I don't know. I'm not an expert in that field, but I'm very interested in keeping Donald Trump alive so that he can save the republic. What are your thoughts on supplementation?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly. Where you and I would probably differ with the question is, instead of having the Secret Service primary and supplementing with private, I would have the Special Forces primary and supplemented with the Secret Service. Now, I know they're going to start throwing tomatoes at me, probably before I can get off the air. But quite frankly, before y'all get too upset, let me explain the rationale. You've got to understand, again, the mindset. Things have changed. We're dealing with combat situations, warfare situations. Secret Service, you're not equipped for that. That's not what you're trained for. Now, can you change your training? Can you change your agency and get up to speed with that? Certainly with the right leadership, I'm good, but we're talking about today. So we need to take the best that we have today, still under military operations, still under government operation, which would be special forces, and make them the lead and then supplement them with whatever else needs to be done on the outer perimeters to make sure the job is complete.
So I asked my friend Don Mann a while ago. I don't know if you're familiar with Don Mann. He was SEAL Teams 1, 2, and 6. Mm-hmm. He's a phenomenal human being. And he's got a TV show called Surviving Man, MANN, which is it's the only reality TV I've ever seen that's true reality TV. Like, it's my wife and I host some segments on it. Plus we host Surviving Man Aftermath, blah, blah, blah. But I said to Don, I said, I can't remember what the example was of a mission, but I said, if you were going to go on this mission with other spec ops guys, how much time would you need to prepare for that? And I asked the same question of Mike Glover, by the way, and they both gave me the same answer. They said none. We've got so much training that whether we've worked with the guy beside us or not, we all know the same things. We've all passed the criteria to get to that level, and we're ready to go. So that just kind of popped into my head because I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if you can answer this, but how often is Secret Service supplemented by external officers like DHS and stuff like that. And what's their ability to gel like the spec ops guys is?
They don't have that ability. They haven't been trained that way. That's not what their purpose is. And here's what happens. Let's carry it a step further. You'll understand why I'm trying to say we need to change the mindset. Because the way Secret Service has operated in the past, and I did some work with the Secret Service, is, we protect our asset. And when we go to a location, we depend on the agencies or the enforcement in those particular areas to provide outer perimeter, outer protection, and we coordinate. Now, that's not what they're trained for either, okay? So we're trying to get all this together in a 2-day advance, maybe 3-day advance team. You're taking a terrible risk, Chris. You really are. You need to have somebody that, just as we said, they are so used to working it together. You may be a replacement, but I'm not worried about looking over my shoulder because I know that exactly. You've been through all the training. You've been through the missions. You know exactly what to do. You do it in your sleep. And that's what we need. And you need to make sure that is primary so that wherever we go, if I don't have anybody else to provide additional assistance, I can complete the mission. We don't have that mindset right now.
And that's it's interesting and disconcerting at the same time.
You see, Chris, we talked about this in the first 2 assassination attempts. What was their big thrust when Kimberly was the director of Secret Service? DEI.
Right.
I mean, how do you do a protective detail when you're concerned about DEI?
Well, I actually, right around that time, I became a proponent of DEI when I was told that it actually stands for deport every illegal.
Then I got the wrong briefing, Chris.
But yeah, that's a topic that I'm deeply passionate over. And I think, we live in a meritocracy and it should stay that way. And if somebody's not capable of doing the job, oh, well, I mean, I don't care if you're black, white, purple, green, whatever. If you're the best person, that's the guy that I want, or girl, whatever the case may be. So let's see if we can get S2 back in here. And S2, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm having damn internet problems. Here I go. I keep saying shit they don't like and they screw with my internet connection.
There you go. So actually pretty good timing. We're just getting into, we haven't even touched on it here, secured communication. So some of the bullets that we had in here were, using Starlink and VPNs. And by the way, I switched from cable internet to fiber optics today. I sent you that screenshot. Basically, it's a giggy connection up and down. But while they were working on that, they ran into some problems. I have my Starlink set up in my backyard. It's a great backup plan for those sort of things. But all of these points are yours as they're prefaced by S2. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on each of the bullets that you threw in there, plus anything else you want to add. And then, Michael, I'll get you to follow up on that as well.
Well, the whole Starlink thing, I mean, it's obviously the satellites are going to be a little more secure as far as a connection from end to end. Unhighlight, actually, I can look into, I didn't open up that thing, so unhighlight those because I can't see it. But the end-to-end encryption with VPNs, yeah. And secondly, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't use a single product suite from anybody. Implement phone and laptop, pull, blah, 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 rotating between. Yeah. Honeypot traps. Yes, definitely. Because
do me a favor and explain what a honeypot is for our audience, for those who don't know.
So a honeypot is when you set up a target, a purposely vulnerable target on a network that somebody is going to try to exploit to get into. And what that does is that allows you to capture that IP information. And in most cases, particularly where we're dealing with military encryption and things like that, I don't care if you're on a VPN. The NSA knows where you are. They can track that stuff 10 ways to Sunday. They have the capabilities of doing that. So require all personal phones in Trump's vicinity to be kept in Faraday bags. That's an absolute must because phones are listening to us all the time. Yep. There are ways to stop it. You can get de-Googled phones and things like that. Require cell phones to use central control app like Mobile Iron. Mobile Iron basically allows a central admin control to control what applications and what you can do on the phone. They can lock things down to a certain point where you can't install applications unless it's okayed by the admin. We used to use that at a company that I worked for, and deploy IMEI catchers. So IMEI catchers, if you have anybody in the vicinity, let's say Ryan Roush happens to be in the area with his
Okay.
cell phone, they could have IMEI catchers out there to say, wait a minute, okay, I've got Secret Service guy one's phone, I've got Trump's phone, I've got Secret Service guy two's phone, and then they pick up an IMEI outside of the security detail that doesn't belong, that's within range of that IMEI catcher. They can catch that, and then they can take that IMEI number and they can triangulate that off of the local towers there to see where that's located and be able to pinpoint exactly where that is and go after the guy who owns it. Log of all calls, that's evidence. So we had a lot of situations, particularly with the Matthew Crooks thing, where they were making phone calls, they were switching texts back and forth using the Signal app. Now, unfortunately, with Signal is 256-bit encryption. It's only that encryption has only been broken once since its inception, to my knowledge. So getting that kind of information, that's one of the reasons why you need Mobile Iron, because you can see, or something like it, because you can see everything that's going on those phones. I don't care if they have Signal on it. They can set those things up to where they're getting screenshots of everything that you're doing within 2 minutes of each other. So if you send a text, it can trigger that, take a screenshot, trigger it again, get a screenshot. That's all evidence later on to support a potential event that's happened. So those are my bullet points on it.
I knew you were going to be very comprehensive and thorough. Michael, do you want to chime in on secured comms?
Yeah, let me just put it in a general term. It gets back to what we talked about before. It's priorities, and it's doing what's best for the country. This administration currently would rather spend your tax dollars on making sure they bring illegals in, making sure they've got hotel rooms and food and all. You know, we've always had this problem with interoperability. That's why we lost so many people at 9/11. That's why we lose people all across the country all the time in first responder things. We don't have the ability to communicate back and forth oftentimes. We've been saying it for decades that we should put together a system that works, that everybody can utilize when necessary in the right place, the right time. Kind of tying into what S2 is saying. If you don't make it a priority, it doesn't happen. We don't have that system as of yet. We've been talking about it for decades. So if your priority is to make the communications what it needs to be, will be great. But if your priority is not, which is what my concern has been all along, on the protection of the president as we move forward in the days ahead, we're going to have some real issues.
Well, here's another piece that I can add to this, because this is something that I've recently been contracted to build. There are off-grid communication systems out there right now that run on long-range, low power. I've actually built several of these nodes. They basically form a mesh network, and it can be a closed mesh network based on 256-bit AES encryption, which basically means you have a closed mesh of devices that can connect to these networks. And if you need to get longer range on it, you can use what's called a pop-up drone and attach one of these devices to it. They're very light, very low payload. You can pop up that drone up to 30, as high as a drone will go to the size you're using, and you can even extend your range a lot further. I've heard these things I've heard tests that have been done where they will actually reach 16 kilometers, and that's just point to point. So that's another backup to the backup to the backup of a communication system that can be completely off-grid and encrypted.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for those people who can't do the conversion or don't know the conversion, 16 kilometers is 10 miles. That's a really decent distance. All right, let's move on to point number 4 here: physical security and protection. So again, we've been told that he has a couple panic rooms in Mar-a-Lago, but you have to have time to do that. And then personal protection. This is your wheelhouse, 1,000%, Michael. You know, outfitted with body armor, ballistic helmet for high-risk situations, et cetera, et cetera. I personally feel, and I don't know if he's been trained or not, I've heard yes and no, that if I was president of the United States, and that would never happen, I would want to have my own sidearm when I'm in public as well. So I'll get you to comment on the physical security, Michael.
Well, here's what you're up against, Chris. We just be on a realistic standpoint. President doesn't want to wear an active shooter vest, it's obvious that you got one on. He doesn't want to wear a ballistic helmet, and he did not oppose to the sidearm, but his position being, if they've gotten all the way through to where they're getting to me, and I'm the last one standing, I probably don't stand much chance with myself being the only one with the sidearm. So it gets back to the position: how seriously are we taking this? And quite frankly, that was the alarm in writing the article. Don't just sit back and assume he's elected now. We can all go home, because the tough times are the days ahead. And if we don't take the security and these precautionary measures seriously, whether it was the communications aspect, whether it's to bring in special forces, whatever it is, then we're going to get some results that we don't want. And that's why it was so important to send that article out. It's time that we prioritize, and it's time that we make this a top priority for this country, and everyone involved support that top priority, because the real threats are the days ahead.
We broadcast through until 3 a.m. on last Tuesday, and the last several hours, say from midnight on, we kept saying over and over again, job number one now is we have to keep Donald Trump alive. We got one little battle out of the way, but the war's still raging. S2, do you want to chime in on physical security and protection?
Well, I do believe that Trump does have a sidearm. I don't know whether he carries it all the time, but I do know that they tried to strip him of his CCW up in New York.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You're correct.
So I'm pretty sure he has something. Like I said, I don't know whether he carries it all the time or not, but I can tell you from my standpoint, I carry all the time. And if I can't carry a firearm someplace where I'm going, which is far and few between, I have other methods of, how should we say, unconventional weapons that I can use. And sometimes non-lethal as well, or less than lethal. And those are some of the things that I think I would be concentrating on. Is I know he doesn't have time to go train in a dojo and learn Brazilian jiu-jitsu and things like that. He's depending upon the people around him, and I think that personal security needs to go back to that level of private security again, where he has those people around him that can shield him from whatever bullet comes his way.
Well said. I don't disagree at all. I don't know if you can see this or not, but this looks like a Sharpie. I know you guys know what it is, but that's it's hard to see in this lighting. That's G12, plastic on the end. That is not a felt tip. It's a really good implement that's easy to get past TSA, while
very effective.
You don't have to be completely disarmed is really what I'm getting at.
Right.
So, all right, let's move on to the next part here.
Let's just hope new TSA agents aren't watching this.
Yeah.
And wouldn't make any difference if they are. They won't remember by tomorrow.
I'll tell you what the ultimate thing to have on a flight would be. I don't know if you know of Compliant Technologies. They make the gloves for hands-on interdiction. And the guy who owns it's a good friend of ours, Jeff Nicholas. He won't let any private citizen have them for just reason, right? I mean, somebody could be at an ATM and you just touch them with the glove and they're toast. It's like a TENS unit that's on like 1,000 times strength. It's a pretty crazy thing, but a pair of those gloves would be a great thing to have when you're flying.
That I would agree with.
I've been hit with them before, Michael. And here's the funny thing is Don Mann has a buddy of his was a former SEAL. The guy's a machine for being in his 60s. And he's got all these different black belts, right? And somebody said to me, yeah, well, he's the only guy who hasn't hit the ground when he's been touched with the gloves. So I went into this whole thing thinking to myself, well, I'm going to be the second guy who does go to the ground. Let me tell you what, I went down like a sack of potatoes in the blink of an eye.
Well, at least you got back up.
It wasn't exactly my finest moment. Let's put it that way. All right. So in the home stretch here, we can discuss 5, 6 is not really relevant to our conversation tonight, but we did feel that it would be interesting and something nice that people could do, Americans could do to protect their president by having, some sort of fundraising campaign where the money that comes in was for one thing and one thing only, and that's ensuring the safety of Donald Trump. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or not, Michael, but we were just trying to be creative when we put this together.
I love the idea. And quite frankly, it's something that InVest should already be a process of. I hadn't thought about it till you just raised the thing. But, I mean, InVest's main goal is to engage the American public into protecting our first responders. And, well, right now we need to make sure we protect our commander-in-chief.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I've got this vision in my head, Michael, of one of your titanium plates that's been laser etched with a 45 and a 47 on.
I'm liking that idea. We can get that done.
That would be phenomenal. That would be absolutely awesome. All right. So S2, do you want to add anything to the fundraising stuff? You don't have to if you don't. Oh, we lost him again.
He's having a hard time tonight, isn't he?
Boy, howdy. Apparently so. So, all right, we'll move on to the next X post that we've got here. So this one makes my blood boil. And we're kind of, now that we've had, the discussion that the, initial plan was for tonight, we can move into some other stuff that is relative to Donald Trump one way or another. I don't know if you've seen this or not, Michael. I'm not going to play the whole 8 minutes and 22 seconds, but CNN of all people is reporting that unelected officials at the Pentagon are plotting against Donald Trump. Right. And leaking it to the news media. Like, what?
Questions at the Pentagon. I don't know at what level this is. It just seems like it's informal discussions. I guess it's understandable they would have those discussions. It also, Scott, is it?
Look, I don't like this because what's Donald Trump supposed to think? He's sitting down there. He's the president-elect. And now he's got to read the newspaper tonight that the unelected bureaucracy of the federal government is having meetings at some level about how to thwart or countermand the commander-in-chief. I don't care if it's at the Pentagon or at the HUD or Ag Department. It doesn't matter. The unelected bureaucracy of this government answers to the civilian and duly elected leadership that we just did. And what if you were in his shoes and you just won the popular vote with a clear mandate, and now you got to read that these unelected bureaucrats are plotting against you? What would you think? If they have problems, let me finish. If they have problems, they should not have meetings that then leak to the press.
So the justification, by the way, coming up, I'll stop after that. But the justification for these civil servants to behave like this is just absolutely asinine.
If they have ideas or things, they should call the president's office and say, hey, we'd like to have some discussions for planning purposes. But secret meetings that leak, terrible way to get off to a start with the new administration.
Well, I agree that that's maybe not the best way to do it. However, Trump has set them up to be in this situation where they think that he's coming after them.
Well, that would be because he is coming after them. I mean,
you're seeing a smile on my face, Chris. Look, we have precedent for this. I mean, General Miley, I mean, that was treason.
100%.
That's just one example. Okay, there are many, many more examples. So here's the point. America sent a very proficient and a very profound message. We're tired of corruption. We're tired of being lied to. We're tired of the direction that this government thinks it can just trample on our rights, and we expect it to be cleaned up. You can't clean it up if you don't hold people accountable for their actions. So when they're sitting here trying to plot, how do we not be held accountable? How can we get around any future directives? They're once again having that mindset that's got to go. That is dangerous to this country. It's dangerous to the globe. You cannot have leadership when your people underneath you are trying to figure out how to subvert what you're saying. I agree with what the other host was saying. You got an issue. Can I have a minute of your time to discuss what your statement was, what your thoughts? How does that impact us? Have you looked at this perspective? That's fine. But to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to get with my other cohorts and behind your back, figure out how to subvert what you're trying to do, that's treasonous. It should be called out. They should resign immediately. And furthermore, they should be facing a military tribunal for their actions.
I couldn't agree more, Michael. This is our friend Mario here. I like the way he put it. He didn't set them up. They set themselves up. So well done, Mario, on that one. So this next article is very germane to the points that you actually just raised, Michael. So we won't go through the entire article. And I don't like the way that the Daily Mail prefaced this with this, title here. This is not about revenge or retribution. This is getting, all those weak links off the chain, like basically what you just said, So I haven't heard him say anything with regards to vendettas. I'm not saying that he's not capable of that, but if nothing else, Donald Trump put on a schooling on the art of the deal during this election cycle by pulling in RFK and Tulsi Gabbard and so on and so forth. He's a bridge builder more than anything else. The only place that I can see where he probably really should seek some retribution would be Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and all those people who were way out of line, and they caused tremendous damage to our country. So I don't know if you want to expand on your previous comments, Michael,
Sure.
but
I'll be glad to, Chris, because I think we need to drive this point home. For America that's listening who've been told the lie, and it is strictly a lie, that we're looking at vengeance and retribution, that is totally a falsehood. What is occurring is that we're holding people accountable for their actions. If we don't do that, then what signal are we sending to not just this generation, but to the next generation? I agree with something you said, Chris. Unfortunately, the president sometimes can be a little too lenient. He tried that in 2016. You see where it got us, okay? Quite frankly, people that are this corrupt, this immoral, this demonic is what I actually call it, have no other choice but to be held accountable for their actions and pay a consequence. If they don't pay a consequence, the rest of society will say, we don't really have law and order in this country. We have selective law and order. And that means if you're in the right place at the right time, you can get away with doing anything you want to. That is not a message we want to send. We have to stop it now, Chris.
I could not agree more. And a recent example that really applies to that is the girl who was at FEMA who instructed her field personnel not to assist people who had Trump signs and Trump flags. And then, of course, the truth always comes out. And that was right after Hurricane Milton here in Florida. Well, the FEMA leadership said, look, we're aware of this. We're going to deal with it, so on and so forth. When they finally put their final response or their last response out, they said she's been relieved of her duties. So does that mean that she's still on the payroll and they're just putting her in timeout? Does it mean she's fired? I mean, she deserves to be, my opinion, and I'm not saying this from a vindictive perspective, but it's an eye for an eye sort of thing. She deserves to lose her job. She deserves to lose her health insurance. She deserves to lose her retirement, everything that goes with it, because I just can't believe we've got to the point where you got people treating other Americans like that.
Well, I would agree with you wholeheartedly, Chris. I mean, and it is interesting. Here's what I want to point out again to your viewers. You have to understand that government has a different lingo than we do. When they say, they've been taken care of, they don't mean what you and I mean. Well, great, they are facing a consequence of their actions. No, what they're facing is a paid vacation and get you out of the limelight so that we don't have to talk about it anymore for a while. Then we'll bring you back in. That's not accountability. What needs to be with accountability is everything you said, but even further, you have abused the office and the position that you've been appointed to. There are criminal penalties for doing that, and they need to be pursued to the fullest extent of the law. Aren't you being harsh? No. Why am I being harsh? If somebody shoots somebody speeds, I mean, whatever it is, we pursue them to the fullest extent of the law. Why should somebody, just because they happen to be in government or happen to have a particular political party affiliation or a particular name, be exempt? That's not what this country was founded upon. We don't need to try to go to that direction. That's how you get dictatorships and tyranny to end up down the road.
Well, I hate to sound like a broken record to our audience, but I've been saying for a while now, Michael, that the only way that I can square all of these anti-American decisions that this, installed administration has done is that our government's under the direct control of our enemies. How else do you explain we give the world everything and we, crap all over Americans? I don't know how else to square it.
Well, Chris, let's put it in very simple terms so everybody understand. When our adversaries spend billions of dollars to make sure that they buy political influence, they're not doing it because they're trying to make a better America. They want something in return. And guess what? They've now called in their favors. They did this during the Biden administration. You saw the connections with China and others, Ukraine. They know how to launder money. They know how to make sure that they get what they're putting their money into. And, in all honesty, Chris, you got to take your hats off to them in one sense. Pretty smart. Instead of building up a military, just buy off the politicians of the country you want to overtake. You end up with no bloodshed. You get it what you want anyway. How disgusting that we allowed ourselves to fall into that position.
Yeah, absolutely. S2, I'm going to pull up the next video that we've got here, which is Gavin Newsom. Can you hear me okay, S2? S2, can you hear me? All right, well, I'll take that as a no. So I'm going to go ahead and play this, and then you and I will discuss it, Michael.
He says he can hear you.
For an emergency special session of our state legislature, firmly focused on the values we hold dear that I think are universal values, that are American values, as it relates to freedoms and individual liberty, as it relates to the issues of reproductive freedom in particular, as it relates to the freedom to breathe clean air and drink clean water, and environmental stewardship, planting firmly our feet as it relates to continuing to advance our low carbon green growth strategies. To do the same as it relates to vulnerable communities. We're not going to shrink, and we're not going to shy or fall prey to the rhetoric around demeaning and belittling vulnerable communities, scapegoating vulnerable communities. We're going to have their back. We're going to have your back. Even if you don't live in the state of California, we're going to have your back.
All right. So, Michael, what are your thoughts on this so-called blue wall that Gavin Newsom's leading the charge on, that he's going to protect his state by disregarding what Trump wants to do?
You know, I mean, I'm laughing because it's great entertainment, but it's sad entertainment.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, Gavin, I mean, it's very obvious in your speech. You care about everybody else but Americans. You want to invest in your carbon blueprint and all. And if we let you have your entire wish list, what does it accomplish at the end of the day? How much does it reduce global warming or anything else? Or the emissions? It doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because America's not the one that's pushing the problem. China and everybody else is, and you don't control them. So quit trying to put us into bankruptcy to solve a problem that does absolutely nothing for the American people other than to line the pockets of your friends who produce this kind of technology that doesn't work. Just like we're talking about electric vehicles and all. Sure, they're great to run down to the store and back. To make them mandatory so you can go from one coast to the other, it's not going to happen. It just doesn't work. Your technology doesn't work. We all know it. You have one purpose in mind. That's you either line your pocket or line the pocket of your friends who are not even Americans. And we're disgusted with that kind of an attitude. And quite frankly, you either need to get out of California and go find a country that accepts your values, or, well, I could say some other things, but I better be careful. I'm on the air.
Yeah, fair enough. What happens in 25 to 30 years from now with all the used up, rechargeable batteries that are no longer rechargeable? It creates a massive environmental problem.
No question. And see, that's what I love about what you're saying, Chris. When you really carry out what they're trying to do, it not only does it not make any sense, it's actually harmful to the American people. They're the ones putting the rhetoric in there where they're trying to lie and convince you of something that's simply not true. And that's what America's tired of. That's what we sent a message in this last election. Quit lying to us. Quit trying to jerk us around. Quit trying to use our dollars against us. We've had it. We've had it with your ideological ideas. And it's time that we restore America back to freedom and greatness again. And your plans don't work.
Yeah, 100%. I'm thinking back to early 2000s, and Microsoft was trying to get into the data center, which they never really did with much success. But their sales ploy was to say, look how much cheaper we are than all these proprietary Unix systems like we had at Sun Microsystems. And we would lay out what we called the TCO, the total cost of ownership. And we'd say, yeah, you can go that way. It's the easiest way to go out of the gate. It's going to cost you a lot less money. But when you add up all the crap that's going to happen over the next 15, 20 years, newsflash for it, it's going to cost you a lot more than just paying for good quality stuff up front. So it's kind of the same idea that
it is.
We're going to mandate this solution because it's so great without recognizing the total cost in the long term is not good for us as a country. S2, can you hear me at all?
Yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Got you loud and clear. Do you want to weigh in on the stuff we just discussed?
Yeah. So if I had to look at this at a holistic view, one of the biggest things that communists always like to do is they like to turn everybody into victims. And if I look at what they've been trying to do, basically, okay, they've stolen our tax money, they've given it to every other nation. Who's the victim out of all of this? They want to instill this victimhood mentality because that is the only way that they can control a population. And that's kind of what I see them doing with every move that they've done, is they're trying to turn everybody into a victim.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying there. And you're right. Everything's always a division in their world, right? Whether it's color, you're a victim. They keep getting equality of opportunity confused with equality of outcome, and they're not the same, clearly. And it looks like maybe Michael's got some connection issues as well. I know it's not.
Yeah, they're screwing around with my internet connection big time. I had to go put on my hotspot. So I'm thinking I'm about ready to drop Spectrum and go to Starlink, honestly.
I don't disagree. I mean, we dropped Starlink for MetroNet, but we've got Starlink, as you know. And I love having it in my back pocket, that just in case, we have a problem with our internet access, I can always fall back on Starlink.
That's what I bought this hotspot for, was just for this stuff. So,
all right. So it looks like we've lost Michael. Hopefully he's okay. But I'm going to pull up this next one. It's 14 minutes. I'm not going to play anywhere near 14 minutes. But the fact that there's still people out there like this next gentleman, I use that term loosely, it's just mind-boggling.
I still have faith in my government to do what has to be done to handle these people. Donald Trump is a Russian asset. He is. And if you don't believe that, it doesn't make it less true. If you are a low information voter and you don't understand what I'm saying by that, it doesn't make it less true just because you don't know information or understand. You can go, "Hey, I'm not Russian collusion. Hey, America, patriot."
Well,
who's that retard?
I don't know. Like, I've got some stuff queued up from here on, just a handful of tabs on stuff like this. I mean, it seems to me that people in his mindset, the more times that a lie is repeated, the more they believe that it's actually the truth. I don't know how else to describe it, but when he says low information, that just kills me, because we've witnessed now for 8-9 years the manipulation of things that Donald Trump has said, videos and otherwise, to try and lampoon them, and it's just not true.
Well, if the law is what the law is, and everybody's so high and mighty on the law, then, okay, we've already done the Mueller probe with all this stuff. It's been disproven, the Russian collusion. So we've been through the legal process of all of this. So explain to me how he's a Russian asset again, please, because I really want to know.
Yeah, so sorry that you had a little technical blip there, Michael. I'm going to play just a sliver of this video that we've already watched, but it's short, and I want to hear your take on it. So let's do this again.
I still have faith in my government to do what has to be done to handle these people. Donald Trump is a Russian asset. He is. And if you don't believe that, it doesn't make it less true. If you are a low information voter and you don't understand what I'm saying by that, it doesn't make it less true just because you don't know information or understand.
So, Michael, thoughts on people who still have this Russia mindset?
You know what's amazing, Chris, is they make these statements with no substantiation, no documentation to back it up. So what do they result to? It's automatically name calling. You are not smart enough to understand what's going on. You don't happen to be in the right places. You don't happen to have the right access to the information. Problem is, you didn't show me that he did either. So, it is just simply baiting. And that's what America's tired of. We're tired of this baiting. We're tired of you calling us names. We're tired of you making threats, allegations, and charges that you can't substantiate. What's even worse is you use our tax dollars to try to put all this together to create false narratives, false charges. And that is why, back to what we talked about initially on the show, we have to have accountability. It's time to take people like that and make sure that they pay a price for taking actions that are totally without merit or that are outside of the law. Now, this particular person was just repeating issues, but the people who actually made those comments in positions of authority who were on the government payroll, why do you think Christopher Wray suddenly decided he needs to step down as the director of the Bureau before Trump gets sworn in? Why do you think James Comey and why do you think McCabe said, oh, if Trump gets elected, we better find a country where they don't have extradition? Well, that's why. Because they know that the American people are now demanding accountability and they can't stand it. And they know that their neck's in trouble because of it. And quite frankly, they created the problem, not us.
Yeah. Sit down and shut up. You will eat the bugs and you will live in the pod.
They tell me that all the time, Stu, but I just tell them no comprende.
That's too funny. So I've got, 4 or 5 tabs left open, things to share. And if memory serves me right, they all have a bit of a comedic element to them. So this 25-second video is one of those comedic moments.
Easiest and most effective form of protest you have right now that you can start immediately, put a mask back on. Stop letting them observe your face and have the side benefit of better health and protecting the rest of us in the world.
Yeah, that one is hilarious.
Fuck this government.
Put a mask back on. All right.
Well, I was going to say, Chris, I'm really supporting her on that one because I think that would be a benefit to society as a whole. I'm encouraging every one of those folks like that. Definitely. That's the greatest thing I ever. Put a mask on. I don't have to see it anymore. Plus, I really can't understand you when you're speaking. That is the best suggestion I have heard. I'll support her. I'll send her a donation if that's what she wants. Start the movement.
100%. I love it.
That's one that could wear 10 masks because here's the problem that we have is people like this, they're suffering from hypoxia. Their brain cells have been killed.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
So true. So true. So I don't know if y'all got this one, but Harris advisor Jamal Simmons actually says the meme live on CNN advocating for Joe Biden to resign the presidency so Kamala Harris can become the first female president for a matter of weeks.
He is looking for. That is my question. I'll start with you.
Joe Biden's been a phenomenal president. He's lived up to so many of the promises he's made. There's one promise left that he could fulfill, being a transitional figure. He could resign the presidency in the next 30 days, make Kamala Harris the president of the United States.
Whoa.
It would absolve her from being able to from having to oversee the January 6th transition, right, of her own defeat. And it would make sure that it would dominate the news at a point where Democrats have to learn drama and transparency and doing things that the public want to see is the time. This is the moment for us to change the entire perspective of how Democrats
Okay, this
operate.
is now jumped from an internet meme to a Sunday morning show.
Jamal's out here right now.
Congratulations.
Season of House of Cards.
Wow. Thoughts on that, Michael?
He gets even more entertaining. I'm really appreciating the show, Chris. Here's what they fail to realize. The American public resoundingly rejected her. So you want to take your platform, okay? You want to bring the Democratic platform back up, bring it back up high profile. What is the profile that you're saying? Screw you, America. We don't care what you think. We're going to rub it in your face anyway. We're going to make her the president for 30 days. Now, honestly, do you really think she could contribute anything? I mean, on a world stage, you've got world leaders now contacting Trump saying, hey, maybe we should go ahead and settle this thing in Ukraine. Maybe we should go ahead and find peace in Israel. You think her being in the presidency was going to help increase that by odds or means? Absolutely not. And the final thing I'll add to it, you told me that President Biden has done such wonderful things. Well, if that were the case, then why didn't he stay in the race and win by hands down? Because the American people, if they would have believed that, they would have voted him back in, in a landslide as well. The fact of the matter is, they know it's not true.
So speaking of Joe Biden, I'm not sure if y'all saw this, but from the Department of Comedic Content.
Come on, face plant. Oh, almost. Here it comes.
I mean,
Come on, faceplant. You can do it.
I'm not in favor of making fun of disabled people, but he's been such an asshole for his entire career, lied through his teeth his entire career. And all the people who propped him up and said that he was sharp as a tack and doing a great job. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I've seen that walk, countless times. My stepfather had Alzheimer's, and they all do it. They get that gait. That anyway.
Joe Biden was sharp as a fart.
You know what's sad, gentlemen, about that video we just saw is that's what the rest of the world sees.
Right, exactly.
So why do you think they would have any respect for this country at the moment? We're trying to gain respect to avoid World War III and other conflicts, and that's how we want to be able to avoid it? Come on, we all know better than that.
100%. So this next one here with JD Vance is absolutely brilliant. I'm sure you're all aware that foreign countries have been threatening Elon Musk for a long time. Pavel Durov, who escaped Russia, went on to become a billionaire software guy, wrote Telegram, owns Telegram, and wouldn't put a back door in for the European Union. So Macron invited him to dinner. It was a setup. The cops grabbed him and basically said, you either hand over the controls, like we used to have on Twitter and we still have on Facebook and everything else, or you're going to go to jail. So he ended up caving on it. And I personally believe if Elon Musk went to Europe right now, they would arrest him as well. There's all kinds of shady stuff with lawfare against him. And I can't remember what the number was, but on July 13th, when crooks tried to kill Trump, Elon Musk said something like there'd been 120 attempts on his life year to date so far. Now, I don't know what type of attacks, but it's still, I guess when you're at the top, there's only one way to go down, and people taking shots at you usually is an indication you're doing something right. But so here's where I'm going with this. JD Vance, I don't know if he came up with this idea. I'm guessing that he probably did, but here is a brilliant response to the European technocrats threatening our entrepreneurs.
The leader, I forget exactly which official it was within the European Union, but sent Elon this threatening letter that basically said, we're going to arrest you if you platform Donald Trump, who, by the way, is the likely next president of the United States. So what America should be saying is, if NATO wants us to continue supporting them, and NATO wants us to continue to be a good participant in this military alliance, why don't you respect American values and respect free speech? Excuse me, it's insane that we would support a military alliance if that military alliance isn't going to be pro-free speech. I think we can do both, but we've got to say American power comes with certain strings attached. One of those is respect free speech, especially in our European allies. Like, look, I'm not going to go to some backwoods country and tell them how to live their lives, but European countries should theoretically share American values, especially about some very basic things like free speech.
I think that was just an awesome idea. Michael, you want to comment on that?
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's carried a step further. You threaten an American citizen, and we take it personally. And so, you want to threaten our people, you need to be prepared for the consequences. And they can be anything from tariffs to we'll give you a whole list. You get to pick and choose which one you want.
Yeah,
that's the only way. We have got to show this straight, or we're not going to be able to survive.
Yeah, 100%. Go ahead, Esty.
200% tariffs all around.
Works for me.
Tell me that wouldn't spur our industrial capacity to go back to the way it used to be. Yeah, everybody would be resurrecting or building new plants here in America. So it's not a bad idea at all. We actually, last night, Michael, we were discussing the 87,000 IRS agents. It actually was 2 nights ago with JJ Carroll. We basically said they should be repurposed to deport illegals.
I think that's an awesome idea. And then when they get done deporting the illegals, we got plenty of other things they can do to secure our freedoms in this country.
Isn't that
the world needs ditch diggers?
So I got one meme and one video. I won't play the whole video because it's long, but there's your Department of Health 2021. There's your Department of Health 2025. Like they say, a picture says 1,000 words, and that's a mouthful right there.
You know, that just shows, Chris, just how really bad this administration is. Can nobody else see that? I mean, you know, are their minds that distorted? They can't see what image that presents?
You raise a good question, Michael, because I've asked countless people saying basically, how do these people not see what a load of crap these things are? Like the rest of us spot it a mile away. And
Right.
I don't know what the answer is for it, but I mean, that picture says a lot. So the last one I'm going to pull up here again, I'm not going to play the whole thing, but it's a 10-minute montage, or sorry, 5-minute montage of people saying Donald Trump will never be president. Now, of course, they all had to eat their words. And again, if you go over to patreon.com/survival dispatch or click the link below, sign up for free. You get all of our briefs. Pay $9.99 a month. You get access to our private Signal channel and a whole bunch of other stuff. So here we go.
He's not going to be president. He is not. Donald Trump is not going to be president of the United States. Take it to the bank.
Okay.
I guarantee it.
All right.
I think if he becomes the president here, make it great, because the States is already good.
I think that man will be president of the United States right about the time that spaceships come down filled with dinosaurs and red capes.
On that note, Tom,
Take it from me. How about that?
Cheers, Tom.
And then, of course, there's Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been saying that he will run for president as a Republican, which is surprising since I just assumed he was running as a joke.
Donald Trump, just last week, he confirmed to the National Review that he is again considering a run in 2016.
Do it. Do it. Look at me. Do it. I will personally write you a campaign check now on behalf of this country, which does not want you to be president, but which badly wants you to run.
So when you stand and deliver that State of the Union address, in no part of your mind or brain can you imagine Donald Trump standing up one day and delivering a State of the Union address?
Well, I can imagine it in a Saturday night skit. I continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president.
Just, that's a great video. If you want to watch the whole thing, like I said, there's a link for it in the brief. But boy, howdy. The only thing I got to say with regards to that, Michael, is I don't believe that we've had a legitimate election since Woodrow Wilson. I think that was the beginning of all this cheating and the global cabal, NWO, whatever you want to call them. I don't think they anticipated the support that JFK would get. I don't think they anticipated the support Trump got in 2016. Look at right up until the last minute, Hillary Clinton, 99% favored to win the election, not a care in the world. And their cheating wasn't enough to overcome it. So then they over cheated in 2020, made it stand out like a sore thumb. And then all of a sudden in this election, there's 15 million votes mysteriously have disappeared, so which was all cheating bullshit. But I like videos like that because I think
which further highlights the fact that they cheated in 2020. When you have 18 million votes just go poof in the middle of the night. Yeah,
exactly.
I think that's what makes it critical that part of what the new administration concentrates on is election integrity. Those who were involved with election fraud, and quite frankly, those who were involved with election interference. And where does the interference mostly play? Either big tech or our mainstream media. Mm-hmm. I think, they need to be held accountable and consequences. Mainstream media, if you've decided that you can't be truthful with the American public anymore, you don't deserve the right to hold your license. I think it's that simple.
And here's another, I'll take that a little step further. I think everybody in every state right now needs to be confronting their county boards of elections and their state board of elections to hold them accountable for what they've done. In my state, Trump took the state in a landslide. We lost every single down ballot seat. Now, how does that make any sense?
It doesn't. And that's why I think, and we've been telling the administration this, one of the key things that we need to do, however long it takes, hopefully it doesn't take long, but we need to go in with everything we have with every state. I don't even care if, like you said, if the president himself carried it. This election fraud has got to come to an end.
Yeah, well,
it's part of national security.
In the meantime, the GOP is out there singing a victory dance and everything. And I'm like, wait a minute, you people have lost the forest for the trees here.
Correct. They really have it, and that's what I was saying in the article. When we started this with law enforcement today. Yes, we may have prevailed with the administration with Trump, but look, they're still working on election fraud down the ticket. Whether it's in the House, whether of course the Senate, they realize that's a lost cause, but in the House and then on the local levels, they're doing everything they can. They have a system that has worked very well for them. They've perfected over the years, over the decades. They're not giving it up, folks. They're not going to give it up without a fight. And it's time we root it out, hold them accountable. And yes, I think they should serve jail time for having done what they've done.
So do I. Absolutely. Again, as a lowercase L libertarian, I hate to see more laws put on the books. And I don't know how you would solve the arbiter of truth, but I honestly believe that all these mainstream medias organizations deserve to lose their broadcast license for telling straight up bullshit. Again, we're back to who's the arbiter of truth, but there's got to be a way to make it work because they can't continue on like they're doing. I mean, you've got young kids on suicide watch because Donald Trump won, and they've got them all doped up on SSRIs and stuff. It's a travesty. It's an absolute travesty.
You got adults that are in college right now that are seeking out safe spaces with coloring books and crayons and cupcakes. Really?
We've got some safe spaces we're lining up all across the country. Unfortunately, they have bars, but they're very safe. So
I love it. So, Michael, one of the things we do on Survival Dispatch News, which tonight's episode was number 305, actually, is to try and provide actionable steps for our audience to do in light of whatever we've discussed, right? So all the podcasts out there, they report something top of the news cycle, they editorialize something top of the news cycle, and then invariably you see disenfranchised people in the comment section. All I see are a bunch of talking heads, and I've been adamant that Survival Dispatch provide actionable steps. So I've got 5 or so that are in the brief, and then I'd love to hear your ideas as well. But based on everything tonight, I think it's the general consensus is they may be quiet and seem like they're being, cooperative at this point in time, but we're moving into a very uncertain time between now and January the 20th. And everybody should have a heightened level of situational awareness because of that. That's without even mentioning all the terrorists that we've let in the country and all the foreign state actors that we've allowed into the country that hate our guts. But here's 5 of them that came to top of mind for me, literally inside of 60 seconds. Make sure you have your get home bag and get home plans in order. The average American works 15 miles from home, and you may end up in a situation where you have to get home on the Ankle Express. And having a get home bag is key to that. And by the way, we just did these reviews on these Blue Eddy bags with a power station in them, and the power station is really meant to be like for drone operators, camera people, and so on and so forth. But we had Pilgrim James on, and he took the exact opposite way of doing things to me. And I'm not saying I'm right and he's wrong at all. What I do is we fill the truck full of stuff, and then we've got our get home bag, and depending on what the circumstances are, that dictates what goes in the bag. So, for example, if we're 15 miles from home, we're not packing a tent and all that. We're not packing anything to have a cookout or anything like that. We can get home in one shot sort of thing. James' exact opposite. He threw everything in his bag but the kitchen sink. His premise is he just takes out whatever he doesn't need based on the circumstance. 6 to 1, half dozen to another, right? All right, number 2, make sure you have plenty of the essentials on hand. We can't preach this enough. Food, water, your medicines, ammunition, and keep in mind that depending on whose numbers you want to believe, food inflation under the Biden admin has increased somewhere between 25 and 31% compounded year over year. I would love to have somebody tell me where you could put money and get a 25 to 31% compounded year over year return. So if you buy food has a long shelf life, you're going to eat it eventually. You're not losing it. You're making money off it. All right. Number 3, pay attention to warnings from your SO and local PD on X. Stuff happens way faster there than anybody else. I'm not aware of any SOs, for example, in our area here that don't put stuff out on X just like that. So that's my personal preference, and that's my recommendation. If you want to ensure that you have backups, get a Garmin InReach Mini and or a Starlink, both satellite-based. Garmin InReach Mini, you tether it to your phone, the network goes down, you can still send communications from your phone up to a satellite and back down to whoever you're trying to message if they have an inReach Mini as well. If they don't, but their internet's up and yours is down, you can still communicate with the satellite. If you need help, there's an SOS button. It's a good $12 a month is what we pay for it. And everybody's heard me extol the benefits of Starlink, and the S2's fixing to get it as well. I can't have it as my primary means because I use a ton of bandwidth, but what a great backup, especially for us here in Florida, where we're, you know, first world country with a third world power grid. And the very last one, and I think you probably have some comments on this, Michael. If you haven't met your neighbors, do it now. They may be all you have if and when terrorist attacks happen, natural disasters, whatever the calamities may be. So I'll turn it over to you, Michael, for your suggestions.
Well, I love what you said. Let me expound on it a little bit further. First and foremost, during these critical days that we're coming into, if you don't own a firearm, you better get one. And you need to make sure you know how to use it. It won't do you any good to take it out of the box and fire the wrong end, okay? In fact, I tell people this is a great opportunity for a family event. Yeah, take your kids to the fire range with you. Let them see that it's not a toy. Let them see what it does. Teach them how to use it. There's nothing wrong with children being able to learn how to use a gun, know where the safety's at, and know how to operate it. So first of all, make sure you have a firearm. Second of all, understand who the players are going to be. So the players that are going to be involved with this will be your first line of defense is local law enforcement, and then state, and then of course, you know, militia will play a big part. Why am I saying all that? Because everyone we talked about on your program has a volunteer program. You say, well, we're already starting now, it's too late. No, it's not too late. Go on ahead and volunteer. Why is that important? Because they need to know ahead of time that you're on their side. Let me tell you, we're talking about a human experience. Like, remember I said in this show that you can't do away with hatred and anger in 24 hours. Well, also, you can't build trust in a matter of 10 minutes either. If law enforcement knows you're one of their supporters and you're one of your backers, you do what you can to help them, whether it's to help contribute to get a vest to them, whether it's saying, hey, look, I want to be a part of your volunteer program. Make it a point to make sure you interact with them, because you will need that relationship down the road. They will respond much quicker to people they think that are supportive and helpful of them than they will to those they think have a disdain for them. That's just human nature. You may not have want to hear that, but that's the way it is. So make sure that you show your support for our first responders. Make sure you tell them thank you for their service. Thank you for the job they're doing. Let them see your face. Let them know who you are, that you're one of a backer and supporter of them, because that's going to make a huge difference in the days ahead. And then, of course, the final thing that I would say is, look, make sure that not only you keep in communications, but as you pointed out, you need to be a leader in your community. You need to know who your people are. You need to know who your neighbors are. You may not like them, but you need to know them. Because quite frankly, here's what's going to happen. I've been in these situations many times. I grew up in a foreign country. When these situations occur, people always look out for where the leadership is at. And they'll be looking out for you if you demonstrate that. You say, why would I want to do that? You're much better off where there's numbers than you are fighting alone, okay? So make sure that your neighborhood sees you, that you know who they are. They will respond in turn when something comes on. They will look to you. Make sure you have the answers. First of all, make sure you're armed. Make sure that you tell people to make sure they have the adequate provisions should something happen. And then make sure that you've got that proper connection with our first responders so that you can say on top and say, my neighborhood is that I represent my neighborhood. Doing this or doing that, what do you want us to do to back you up, first responders? Boy, it'll go a long way in the days ahead. Trust me. You'll get a lot further than if you do it in opposite direction.
Great advice, Michael. That was great. I like how you said right at the beginning, essentially, it's never too late to start. And when you said that, what crossed my mind is a very famous quote from Wayne Gretzky, where he said, the only goals I never scored were the shots I never took. Like you got to take a shot, right? You got to engage. S2, your thoughts?
Wayne Gretzky. Bobby Orr's best.
I actually met Bobby Orr. Bobby Orr's brother was a prolific drinker and drove the Zamboni at this one arena I used to go to years ago. And he looked identical to his brother, by the way. Like, I mean, spitting image. First time I saw him, I thought it was Bobby Orr. So anyway, go ahead and give us your thoughts on what our audience can do.
Yeah, all of what you said was good, Chris. And I'm in the same camp as Mike. Michael. I look at our local law enforcement as our first line of intelligence. They are the guys that are on the street. They are the ones that can tell you where the bad guys are, what they're probably planning on doing, where they're going to hit first. I would also add to that, get yourself a digital police scanner. Yes, things happen quickly on X, but it's going to happen a lot quicker in your immediate area. Make friends with your fire department too.
Yes,
they're right down the street from you, and if they know you, they're more apt to come put out a fire at your house first before anybody else. If they know you, go down, take them a box of donuts or take them a few pizzas down there for dinner. Those guys cook their own dinner every night. Go down, take them a couple of pizzas down there. They'd be happy to get a night off from that.
That's
But
a great
frankly,
advice. Dude.
but
Keep
frankly,
going.
some of them actually enjoy cooking, so that's kind of their little outlet there for cooking for everybody. But that's, like I said, what we do. When we see a group of police officers in a restaurant, we buy their dinner for them, and we don't look to them. We tell our waitresses we don't want them to know who bought their dinner for them.
Yeah,
because what that does, it sets up a psychological trigger out there to say, we don't know which one of the people in this restaurant did this. It could be any of them. It could be all of them. And if they look around and they recognize anybody later on down the road, then you've got an ally there. And as far as your neighbors, I know all of my neighbors, and all of my neighbors know what my capabilities are. But I will tell you that 65 to 75% of my neighbors are useless. And I know that they all tell me, we're coming to your house. And I'd be like, I wouldn't bet on that if I were you. You've displayed no ability or desire to prepare yourself. Don't think you're going to come to my house and take up my supplies, because it's not going to end well for you. Right. So all I can do is I can teach people how to grow their own food. And if you don't take my heed, then it's on you. I've got extra supplies laying around, and that's another thing you can do too, is get extra supplies, because that's what's going to happen. And what a better way to build an ally than to be able to hand somebody a bag of food and say, here you go. This will take care of your kids for a couple nights. Now go do something to fix your situation.
Yeah. Great advice.
Well, I love what Chris has got in terms of a list. Print off that list, take it to your neighbors and say, look, we're living in different times now, and I just wanted to give you a heads up. I'm making sure I'm prepared, and I'm going to try to provide the direction the neighborhood needs, but can't do it by myself. Here's what you need to do to make sure you're prepared.
Well, that was another thing too that I had to add to this too. So I had technical difficulties with my internet tonight, but you know what? I had a backup to that, and I had another backup to that if that wasn't going to solve that problem. So get yourself some kind of redundant comm systems that you can have something to fall back onto.
Yeah. Well, yes, too. I will tell you this. It's the first time in all the interviews I've done over the years, I've had technical difficulties. I had some tonight. So it must either be our topic or it must be the company that I'm keeping. But at least I had a backup to be able to get back.
Yep. That's awesome. I mentioned this before to our audience, Michael. You'll get a kick out of this, but we live in an older established subdivision that's on the edge of town here. And, we ride our bikes around here. 3 people out of the entire subdivision, there's 500 homes in here, 3 had Harris signs. We go to vote, which is a church just around the corner. We come back from voting, and somebody took a Harris sign out of somebody else's yard and put it in my front yard. So just like, you asshole.
Perfect camouflage.
Well, I've got a kick-ass flamethrower, and it is going to make a fiery ending this week. I'm going to use it to open one of our videos when I torch.
I love it. One other thing I want to put in there, Chris, is they go to our website. We're putting together a program where, you get some identification from Invest with, it looks like police identification. So, you may want to kind of sign up for that program, because trust me, from all my years involved with law enforcement, they think you're one of theirs or you support them. Yeah. We have a little different attitude than if we think you've been working to try to get rid of us or to try to knock us off. Big difference.
So when all the crap was going on with the riots and defund the police, blah, 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 I got pulled over for speeding a couple times. And in both cases, they were super nice guys and they let me go. And I said to my wife, I said, like when we were youngins, we were in high school and I was always the driver because I worked midnight shifts on the weekend at a truck stop for money. So I would drive everybody around party to party until I had to go to work. And, you get pulled over by Smokey the Bear and you open the trunk and, they've got cases of beer and stuff. And the cops would just take the beer and tell you to go on, for your night sort of thing. Right. And I said to Cindy, I said, I think these days, because of all this rioting bullshit, that most police recognize that we're all that's left that truly supports them across the board, without any hesitation. So it's just interesting evolution over time. But as to hit us with the conflicted question, please.
Okay, here we go. Let me get back up to it.
Invest USA.
Conflicted question.
Sorry, go ahead.
Conflicted question is, it was time Gordon sat his wife down and told her about the realities of a world post-collapse. Things would be much different now. She would have to adopt a new way of looking at the world. If you had to prepare a loved one mentally, emotionally, to live in a world after the collapse of modern society, what would you tell them? And we don't just want to sit here and give you guys the answers. We want to see your responses in the comments sections as well. So go ahead and get dirty and roll up your sleeves and wallow in the mud. So Chris, we'll go to you.
Yeah, I'll take the first stab at it. I think that my wife and I were on the same page, so it would have to be somebody else in our family. It wouldn't be us. But I think the way that I would frame it from a context perspective is that life just got a whole lot better because my phone's up there, but you don't have your weapon of mass distraction following you. Like I turned off all notifications on my phones years ago. My phone doesn't even ring anymore because I've got it all locked down. I can't stand being interrupted with that stuff. And I think it's been crappy in some ways for our country. Good in some ways, crappy in other ways. I would just say this is something to, essentially celebrate. We're going back to simpler times, and things were a lot better when they were simpler. I was born in 1969, and so was my wife, and we've countless times said we had no idea how good we had it in the 70s and 80s growing up, and what we wouldn't do to go back to a simpler point in time. So I would sell it to whoever the person was in my family or circle as this is actually, besides the loss of life, this is actually a good thing. We're going to go back to simpler times. So that's all I got. Michael?
And to you, Michael.
I think mine would be very simple. Your outcome will be based on your outlook. And you can either determine, I'm totally decimated by this, devastated, I don't know what to do. Or you can look at it as a challenge of an opportunity. It is amazing what the body can do and what human spirit can do given the right motivation. And if you realize that, hey, if I look at it the right way, I'm going to survive, I'm going to make this thing through, you'll come up with great ideas and great opportunities. If you think you've been devastated, you will be, and you'll be one of the casualties.
100%. 100%. S2, lay it on us.
Well, again, like you, Chris, my wife and I are on the same sheet of music. I don't think many of our family members quite grasp the gravity of the situation at this point. But I think it kind of goes along the things that I've tried to insinuate to my neighbors. And those are the people that I've really been trying to say, hey, you might want to go out and get some food or something and start growing a garden. I've got one guy that did it. And I don't think that there's really any way to convince somebody of an outcome with this situation until it actually happens. Things have to get hard before people realize, okay, maybe that guy was right. So I don't know that there really is a way to convince anybody to do something that they're not normally prepared to do. All of us that are in this SGN channel, we've all had some exposure to war. We've all had some exposure to hard times with things. A lot of people in our world have not. Things are going to have to get a lot harder before things get better. And that's all I can say about that.
No, that's a great comment. And I know we're running short on time here, but I had an interview last week, Michael, with a reporter from the Epic Times. And I asked her, like, she's like the third person I've met from there. I keep asking them, is it the Epic Times or the Epoch Times? And her answer was the same as the other two. So they must have like an SOP for it, because they both said yes. I'm like, I'm like, okay. So it was all on situational awareness. And she had watched one of our videos and, you know, took an interest in the subject of situational awareness. So she's writing this article for the Epic Times. And as we got into it, she kept saying, I've never heard of any of this stuff. I feel like, you know, I've been naive and stuff like that. And not in a bad way. She's a really decent person. So I pulled Tony Blauer into the conversation. Tony's a close personal friend of mine, preeminent world expert on sudden violence. And so that she's interviewing him on Monday. But it was kind of interesting to speak with somebody who had not heard any of the things that we talk about. You know, had never heard anything about being gas station ready, had never contemplated just having a flashlight in your pocket is enough to, you know, disrupt somebody's OODA loop, all those simple things.
Right.
It was interesting. I think if we get the word out, that we could actually make traction, because once people find out it's a thing to be situationally aware and you can defend yourself, I haven't met anybody who said, oh, I'm not interested in that. Every person's been, that's fascinating. I'd like to learn more.
I'm grateful for your show, Chris, because I think if ever there was a time that we're fixing to have to experience it, we're headed into it, and we're headed on a fast track.
Yeah, you know what? We're not doomsday preppers. We've said from the get-go that people should prepare for the thing that is most likely to happen to them. So, for example, if you live in Florida, you should prep for hurricanes. And if you live in Oklahoma, you should be prepping for tornadoes. And if you live in rural California, you should be preparing for wildfires, sort of thing. But I couldn't agree with you more. All the indicators right now is that the next, like you said, 60 to 90 days is fragile at best. And let's hope and pray that we come out of it on the back end without too much damage. But when I end this, by the way, Michael, it'll pop up the closing video. It'll put you in the green room. If you've got a couple minutes, as soon as the bumper's done, I'll bring us all back on screen for a quick AAR.
You got it.
All right. So, all right. Appreciate your time, Michael. Obviously appreciate your time as usual. S2, appreciate everybody out there who follows Survival Dispatch. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and God bless America.
God bless America.
If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets. Unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.